The history and accounts of the Renaissance is remembered by the public as a purely European phenomenon that was centered on a largely homogeneous ethnicity. At the same time, it reduced the presence of people of African descent to the role of servants or slaves. Neither of these two theories was true, for they both were weaved purely based on historical stereotypes. From the mid-15th century onward, people of African descent began to be an integral part of European society, which helped reshape the classical culture of Europe. This powerful reshaping and development of the European culture are evident through many historical examples, one of which is Alessandro de Medici, the Duke of Florence. Alessandro de Medici was the first of the Medicis to rule Florence as a hereditary monarch. In 1510, the city of Florence witnessed the birth of Alessandro to Lorenzo II de Medici. Most of the contemporaries recognized him as the only son to Lorenzo II. However, few believe him to be the illegitimate son of Giulio de Medici, who later became known as Pope Clement II, nephew of Lorenzo I, also known as Lorenzo the Magnificent. In 1510, Clement VII chose young Alessandro over Ippolito to be entrusted with Florence. Ippolito was assigned as a cardinal, a senior leader, and an ordained bishop of the Catholic Church. At the time, Alessandro was already appointed as Duke of Pienza by Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. On the 5th of July, 1531, Alessandro arrived in Florence to assume his new position, and about 9 months later, Charles V made him officially the hereditary Duke of Florence by the new Florentine Constitution in April of 1532. That was the end of the Republic and the beginning of a new era. Alessandro was able to win the affection of his subjects through his common sense and his strong feelings for justice. The Medici family became extremely wealthy, not only due to their social status, but it was because they were successful business owners. They were leaders in the Florence merchants, particularly the wool merchants. However, the establishment of the Medici Bank by Giovanni de Medici provided the name of the family with more prominence and grandeur, along with the profits that the business reeled in. Later on, Giovanni's son was the first to become a political leader. This success allowed the Medici family to rule Florence for about 2 centuries. Besides being economically powerful, which allowed the Medicis to rise in the ranks, they were also famous for their patronages of the arts. It means that they used to sponsor artists and pay them commissions for major works of art. This had an enormous impact on the shaping of the culture of the Renaissance, for it allowed the artists to focus on unleashing their creativity without having to worry about financial issues. They supported famous artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello. They also supported the rebuilding of the Basilica of San Lorenzo. Hence, the considerable amount of art and architecture that were produced in Florence during the beginning of the Renaissance is owed to the Medici family. As the Duke of Florence, Alessandro ordered the removal of the consul bell from the Palazzo della Signoria. Among the small-scale commissions that were made during his reign, there were the elaborate designed medals that glorified Alessandro as a peacemaker. The most prominent ones were created in 1534 by Domenico di Polo, and in 1535 the Francesco del Prato. Also in 1534, Giorgio Vasari painted a portrait of Alessandro depicting him as a defender and protector of Florence and a prominent growing branch of the Medici family tree. Artists such as Jacopo da Portomo and Giulio Romano also painted other portraits of him. The most significant commission that was made during his reign was the Fortezza de Basso, also known as Fortress of St. John the Baptist, a highly technical and architecturally important citadel that was built and designed against the city between 1534 and 1537 by Antonio de Sagallo. The citadel is currently the largest architectural monument in Florence. The Medicis didn't restrict their support to the arts and architecture, but they also supported scientists in their efforts in the different fields of science. They supported the famous Galileo Galilei, who also tutored the children of the Medici family. All those major contributions of the Medici family gave rise to their acquired title, the Godfathers of the Renaissance. Alessandro happened to be ruling Florence during the period of the birth of the Italian Renaissance, and he played a crucial part in establishing the power of the Medici family in Italy. The 14th century Florence was the origin and center of which the Renaissance was born, and then it began to spread across Europe and eventually the rest of the world during the period of 3 centuries. This cultural, political, intellectual, and scientific explosion of ideas changed the world by paving the way for further advancement. The fluidity of the Renaissance ideas allowed it to change and evolve in order to match the local cultural conditions and thinking of whichever country it reached, while at the same time maintaining its ideals. From circumnavigating the world to understanding our planet's position in the cosmos, from the beauty of the Da Vinci's Mona Lisa to the brilliance of Shakespeare, the seeds of the modern world's advancement in science, mathematics, literature, and art were sown and grown during the Renaissance. Today, Florence is often described as an enchanting romantic city in Italy. However, at the time of Alessandro de Medici, Florence was more than just an enchanting city. It was a powerful entity across the entire country. Florence served as an influential capital for a long while, but it was as if the case of many other powerful political entities in history, the capital was eventually relocated not only once, but Italy over time had no less than 6 capitals: Milan, Pavia, Turin. All of those were capital cities of Italy. Alessandro de Medici was living proof that Africans and people of African descent were a major ingredient in the so-called homogeneous ethnicity that made up the European culture and civilization. Africans were not bystanders waiting for the arrival of different forms of civilization that are represented in the arts, architecture, literature, and science. On the contrary, they themselves were contributors in the advancement of such fields. Alessandro also shows that Africans didn't make such contributions from behind the shadows, but rather they did so from prominent positions such as his, the Duke of Florence. Alessandro de Medici, also known as Il Moro, or the Moor, because of his complexion. Alessandro de Medici only lived to be 26 years old. He was assassinated by his cousin Lorenzo de Medici, who was hoping to wield power as the Duke of Florence himself. However, he was deposed and pretty much run out of town. He never had a moment's peace from the day he arranged his cousin's assassination. He himself was murdered some 12 years later. Some of the most powerful and prominent families in history throughout Europe actually have the blood of Alessandro de Medici. That includes the Habsburgs of Austria and, of course, several prominent families in Italy. Alessandro had 3 children, 2 of which were legitimately born, and one, of course, at the time was considered illegitimate. There may have been more, but contemporary belief is that there were 3. However, his wife Margaret, he was also survived by his wife Margaret. There has been a deliberate attempt to whitewash the history of Alessandro de Medici. However, at least one of the portraits of Alessandro de Medici was actually painted by someone who was not just an artist, but also considered a friend, and probably has the most accurate likeness of Alessandro de Medici, which clearly depicts him as someone of African descent. And as usual, you can always tell the Medicis by the nose. They have a very prominent nose. In spite of the African ancestry, the nose is all de Medici. I've been wanting to do this video for some time. I hope you enjoy it. Something a little bit different from all Sussex all the time. Please let me know what you think about it. He's one of my favorite characters from European history anyway. But there's so much more to African American history throughout the world. There's the Africans in all of Europe. Remember, they played a very prominent role, no matter what the history books won't tell you.